Hello, welcome to Orst. So Orst is a tiny hamlet on the outskirts of Bristol. There's not much going on here today, but 50 years ago this would have been quite a bustling little place, because what you see behind me here is the remains of the southern terminus of the Severn ferry. The Severn ferry, of course, was rendered completely obsolete the day that bridge opened up. So I'm here with my homemade camping gear. Got the pack, the tent, got the candle lantern, got my knife and a load of other stuff. And my plan is to hike from here, from this river crossing, to the next one, which is just outside of Gloucester. That's about 50 miles, which is at least double any distance I've walked before, so it's going to be quite a challenge. Almost under the bridge here, and you can see by the marks, these green marks there, how high the water gets. Of course, the River Severn's got one of the highest tidal ranges of any river in the whole world. That seems to be the worst of the rocks over, thankfully. It's much easier underfoot now. Well, this seems to be the last bit of shade for a long time. Next I've got to go all the way around that bend. In the distance you might be able to see Sharpness Docks. Just beyond that's where I want to stop for the night. Let's delve into the pack and see if I remembered all the brew kit. One thing I did bring along is a chair. This is a cheap Chinese rip-off of the brand version. Seems to be okay. That for 20 quid or whatever it was, it's quite amazing. Oh, that's pleasant. That is. Oh, I tell you that, sitting back in the chair, that really is luxury. So what I've got I've got actual military ration packs for main part of my sustenance, but for now I'm just going to have a cup of tea and some biscuits. While we're waiting for the tea to brew, this is an old Soviet telescope I bought back in the days when I thought Soviet stuff was cool, before they went and ruined it all. But it's a great telescope. That's not even Sharpness, that's bloody Oldbury. Bloody hell. I thought that was Sharpness Docks, it's Oldbury Power Station. So we've got to go twice the distance that it is to that building there. Very merry. Well, it's very pleasant sat here, but I've got a long way to go. There's that power station in the distance. I want to be on the other side of that for lunch. Oh, it looks like a long way away. I've reduced my belt kit just down to the water bottles. Yeah, with the bag as well, it's all getting a bit, everything gets in the way of everything else. The bag on its own, the actual rucksack, I really like. It's just the current weight of it that's disagreeable. Just need that camera and we'll be off. Over there, oh, around there. No shade now. Better. I've got the camera bag, well, sort of slung over me like that. Suddenly I can go much quicker. But I am sort of hanging on to the strap, so it's not, still needs some work. Having the rucksack and the camera bag sort of separately isn't really working. I think next time I'll try and get have the camera attached to my waist, or maybe have a smaller camera. Queue on. Well, the sailing club is behind us and the power station just in front. So I can get to the other side of that. We're going to have lunch. So now I'm on the lookout for a shady spot. That seems unlikely. People do though. I've done it myself. But there is a risk of drowning, and it happens every year. People go out onto the sandbanks, and some of the sandbanks are really nice and firm, and you can go out a long way, and then the tide comes in suddenly, and it is sudden, and then suddenly you're cut off on your sandbank, and then people try and swim back the way that they walked out. But of course by that point you've got a tide coming in as well as a strong current going out. Scary stuff if you're caught unawares. Oh, I'm hanging. I had to walk all the way. The only shade I found is this tiny little scrap of it here, but it'll do. This is part of the reason that the pack's so heavy. So British Army 24-hour ration packs. I've got 2 of them, but they are brilliant. So in a ration pack you've got the MREs, the meals ready to eat, which are these things. So I'll have one of those for lunch. And it comes with a massive pack of teas, coffees, tissues, matches and hand wipes. And then a whole load of energy drink powders. So I've got 2 water bottles. One is for cooking and hot drinks, and the other is for cold drinks. So I'm going to chuck that in there in a bit. And a whole load of snacks and things. Yeah. Loads of energy drinks. We've got here more drink powder, more drink powder. Oat biscuits. There's just all sorts of goodies. It's a proper pick and mix. Bindi Chana Aloo. Now I think I've had this one before. The British Army curries are excellent. Maple syrup bun. Nuts. Some nuts in it. Meatballs and pasta. Well, I'm fully victualled up. It's time to leave the tiny spot of shade and out into the blistering sun. So there's where we come from. There's that power station, and here's where we're going. It's hot, but it's not going to get any hotter today. It's not much of a positive. That's the best I can manage at the moment. Just in the distance, the tallest building, I think that's Sharpness. That's where I want to be, beyond that, by tonight. I've gone slightly off piste. There's the path on that ridge. I saw a bit of shade and I couldn't resist. Oh. Yes. Very hot. 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we're just over half the distance I want to travel today. So it's not looking good. I'm just showing you we're on a long stretch of pretty much nothing. No shade, no real terrain, a few cows. Is our next power station coming up? Oh. It's still bloody hot. At this point we're going to have to detour inland and go inland of the power station. It's a bit annoying. Oh, bloody hell. That tower there is still Sharpness and I still haven't quite reached it. I have though got back to the Severn and I think the tide is fully in. So there was a huge detour to get round Berkeley Power Station, which is this one here. So these two towers are Berkeley. Way off in the distance there, that's Oldbury. That's where I had lunch. But approaching Berkeley Power Station, instead of coming round on the riverside like you can with Oldbury, you get diverted almost into the village. And as I'd actually run out of water, I went into the village, got some water, and then came out again. Then at that point, oh, it was humid. I had a proper sense of humour failure as the mozzies came up and I was just drenched with sweat. It was grim. Now, at this point, at 9 o'clock or so, it's actually pretty pleasant. It's the nicest it's been all day, in all honesty, but I'm totally knackered. So this is where I've ground to a halt. I'm going to have some dinner and see what's what. Oh, that's great. So the tide is now falling. We've had high tide, so it's actually going out. And it won't come in again until 8 o'clock. So that means I can camp there. Yeah. Oh, I might do that. Oh dear, what a day. That was brutal. At times that was brutal. 10 pegs and poles. See if I can remember how to do it. It still makes me laugh. Well, I'm going to have one last indulgence before bedtime. Not meths. I'm going to have a hot chocolate. Well, while I wait for my hot chocolate to come to the boil, I can tell you about the inspiration for this trip. So this is something I've actually wanted to do for a very long time. Something like this, at least. But what actually kicked me into gear to getting on and doing it was that my friend and fellow YouTuber Katie from the channel Katie Ventures walked the South Downs Way. Now Katie is awesome. She's walked hikes across the world going epic journeys. But this year she just set off and did the South Downs Way, 100 miles in one go, as if it was nothing. And so I thought to myself, well, anything Katie can do, I can do half as well. And so here I am on a 50-mile hike, which didn't seem so daunting before I set off. Question is, can I blow this out without setting my hair on fire? Yes. So if you like what you see here, I highly recommend checking out Katie's channel, Katie Ventures. I'll put a link in the description. She does all this kind of wild camping stuff just far more competently and with a lot less fuss. Anyway, I'm going to finish this hot chocolate and go to bed and get up at dawn. So I'll see you then. Good morning, welcome to day 2. It's shortly after 5, just before dawn by the looks of it. There's traces of the sun coming up. I'm going to strike the tent, pack up and go and find somewhere for breakfast. There's the Tower of Sharpness Docks. That's what we're heading for still. That wasn't forecast for a couple of hours, and even then only 50% chance, so I've just got unlucky. This is the picnic area I had in mind for breakfast. Of course, it wasn't raining then. So this is Sharpness Docks, or the beginnings of. Those lock gates, that's the start of the Sharpness to Gloucester ship canal. And for a big chunk of the next part, we'll be having to walk up the canal. Well, I've just checked the forecast and the rain's going to get worse for at least a couple of hours. So that's unfortunate. Yes. And this picnic spot doesn't have a scrap of shelter, so I'm not really tempted to stay here and have breakfast. Well, if you want my review of Sharpness Dockyard so far, it's a bit of a dump. Literally, in fact, that's a massive scrapyard behind us. But the rest of it doesn't look too pretty either, really. A few old buildings. But generally there's just rubbish everywhere. And it all just looks a bit manky. Possibly here it's raining. It's raining quite hard. I'm under a bridge, so it could be worse, and it was until I got under the bridge. This bridge is actually one of the things that I was looking for. This is the remnants of the railway bridge that went over the River Severn. So the part that I'm sat under at the moment, having a coffee and some biscuits, this is a swing bridge, so it swings to let the ships go up the ship canal. Oh, and here we are actually on that bridge, on top of it. Well, this is a bit different. We're now at the Sharpness Old Dock, and you can see behind me it's far more peaceful. So this would have been the original lock between the canal water, you can see how high that is, and the river. Not a lock anymore, it's just a massive barrier. Check that out. High tide was a couple of hours ago, and this is it flowing back out. Look at the flow in that. I have actually been on a boat going down as the tide is going out, so you've got the tide flushing out into the sea, and also there's a powerful current on the Severn. So yeah, so I was in a little inflatable boat going like the absolute clappers. Get the telescope out and see where we've come from, because it looks like a long way from here. Felt like a long way. Severn Bridge, and that's Oldbury Power Station. So looking upstream now, I'm going to see if I can see any remnants of the old railway bridge that went across there. It's hard to imagine how dramatic that would have been. I mean, we saw a tiny bit of it with their swing bridge there, but just stone towers and cast iron. Quite something. So there's two towers I can see on this bank. We'll probably go past those. Over on the other side, there is just a trace. There's like a pile of rocks on that side. I can give you some idea of what the bridge used to look like with some of the photos that are in this book. This book's actually on long-term loan from my dad, but a snail ate it and I've been too embarrassed to actually give it back to him. This is the swing bridge that swings over the canal. There's the ship canal, and that's the pivot point in the middle, and over there that's where I had breakfast. This is the best picture of the bridge when it was in its heyday, and you can see there how nicely built it was with these I think these are wrought iron, these spans, and then cast iron columns. So it was quite a lovely bridge, and in constant use as a railway bridge right up until one night in 1960 when somebody managed to drive a tanker into it, and it all went downhill from there, and they ended up just dismantling it. Remember, this was the time of the massive cuts in the railways anyway, around about that sort of era, and it was just deemed not economically viable to repair it, so it was pulled down, and even the dismantling it went horribly wrong, and more ships were lost doing that, so a right old mess in the end. But for, well, 90 years it's a massive Victorian structure there. Oh, and I've got a bit of trivia for you about the bridge as well. Bear in mind, so I've shown you what the structure looked like. There used to be quite a thing during the war to fly airplanes underneath it, including a lady Spitfire pilot, Anne Brown, famously flew a Spitfire through the middle of the under the middle of the bridge. Would have been quite something. Here we go. This is all that remains of that railway bridge. You can tell I'm getting tired, my words aren't coming out right. This is it, this is the mortal remains of that bridge. This is all that's left. So you can see on my right is the canal, on my left is the river. I'll get to a point soon when I get really close. Well, I've made it to Purton Ship's Graveyard, and they weren't really ships, it's not really a graveyard. I'm standing inside the hull of the barge, the Dispatch, which was built in, I'm just reading this from the plaque over there, 1888, and was beached here in 1961. There's a whole row of them going both ways out there, and it's more than a graveyard, it's an attempt at erosion control, because you've got the river here and the canal is raised up just there, and the embankment that held the canal up was starting to slip into the river. So the idea was, by beaching all of these boats along here, they'd mitigate that somewhat. It did look much more impressive, but obviously time has taken its toll. I remember coming here as a very small child, and I do have a memory of it, of a whole load of wooden boats, but just the skeletal remains of them, just the ribs and the keels. Those seem to have all gone now. And this is going to be pretty much the end of this journey for me. Yesterday I walked about 18 miles, and today, despite getting up at 5 o'clock, it's midday now, more or less, I've managed about 4. I had my dad on standby to pick me up at my destination, and I've just contacted him. He's very kindly agreed to pick me up early, so I'm waiting for the lift to turn up. I've still got about a mile to go, but it's that's manageable. But my feet hurt, and I'm just getting slow at doing things. That's what I noticed. I'm trying to talk to the camera and struggling for my words. That's a bad sign. So that's it for me for this trip. I could force myself on, but because I do hate for things to end in failure, and it does feel like well, it is a failure. I'm not going to achieve what I set out to do. That is a failure by definition. But on the other hand, to be realistic about it, if I carry on now, I'm just going to go downhill even more than I have already today, or yesterday even. And what's the point in that, really? So if I quit now, I can come back again, do it properly and enjoy the experience. And so you'll just have to look forward to part 2 when I do that. I tell you what though, this has given me just even more respect for Katie and people like her that just make this all look easy. So once again, if you want to see someone from the UK doing this sort of stuff but doing it well, go and watch Katie Venture's channel. And if you want to see an out-of-shape middle-aged man try and redeem himself at some point in the future, come back to this channel and watch part 2. But anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you next time. Cheers.